Hello, ScotsCare podcast listeners. We're thrilled there's more of you than ever before, and we want to keep it that way. But did you know that most of us listen without subscribing or following the podcast? We would love it if, whichever platform you listen to, you follow or like or subscribe to the podcast. It makes a huge difference to us. Now, let's get on with this week's programme. Hello, I'm Marcus Railton, and welcome to Series 3 of the ScotsCare podcast. ScotsCare is the only charity dedicated to helping disadvantaged Scots across London, breaking the cycle of poverty through services such as financial support, homelessness, mental health therapy, family support, advocacy, sheltered housing, social events and befriending, amongst others. In the new series, I'll be chatting with guests from all backgrounds, all with one thing in common: Scottish roots. Listen to the ScotsCare podcast to hear their story. The Queen of Scottish crime writing joins me for a blether this week. Denise Mina hit the big time with her first novel, Garnet Hill, in 1998, and she's never looked back. 20 books later, she's still going strong and still a wonderfully down-to-earth person. We started out our chat with an admission from me. I'm actually a really big fan, and I was filled with nerves just to be chatting to her. We spoke about success and how this has changed her life, and what has stayed the same, and how she tries to find a balance. We chatted about the 5 best-selling Alex Morrow crime novels, and I asked her how close the main character was to her own personality. Her answer is actually very interesting. Other things we chatted about: her book Conviction. This ended up on the Reese Witherspoon Book Club, and then Reese Witherspoon, the Hollywood A-lister, optioned it to make it into a film. She doesn't know if that's going to happen yet, but it's a possibility. We had a natter about getting older, but not in a bad way, actually celebrating it, and mental health and how she protects her own. Stick around at the end for a bit more chit-chat and to find out who's coming up next on the programme. But right now, here we go on the ScotsCare podcast with Denise Mina.
ScotsCare, the charity helping to break the cycle of poverty some Scots find in London.
It's lovely to meet you. I feel very nervous meeting you, actually.
Why?
Oh, because I don't want to sound ingratiating, but I'm a huge fan, and I said to Becky, my wife, I'm really nervous, and she went, "Oh, are you going to do what you did to Ian Rankin?" And I went, "Oh, don't mention Ian Rankin, because I was chairing a couple of events at the St Andrews Book Festival last year, and Sir Ian was there, and I said, 'Oh, Becky, Sir Ian's here, and he's in the green room, and I'm going to go and talk to him, and I've read everything he's ever written.'" And I managed to say, blah, blah, blah.
We've all done it.
I just looked like and he was lovely, but I looked like a right idiot in front of him. So.
Listen, Ian's done that. Have you seen the picture of him with Ian McCulloch?
No.
Ian gets tongue-tied with people that he really admires. There's a picture of him with Ian McCulloch, and Ian McCulloch is like looking like a rock star, and Ian's standing next to him, and Ian's like that. So we've all. It's a weird thing if you're invested in somebody and they don't know that you exist.
Because I was doing a chat with the author Colin McIntyre, the guy from the Historical Society, and so for some reason now when you Google my name, a picture of Ian Rankin and Colin McIntyre comes up. So it's just an even bigger insult that I'm not even in the picture.
That's great.
Thank you for doing this. Thanks for joining us. It's great to have you.
I'm delighted. It's a really interesting topic, actually.
Well, it's a very old charity. It's been going 400 years, and I was kind of introduced to it by a guy called Doug Carnegie, and he was head of a BBC department, and I'd been working in another place, and it was just awful. And he said, "You got to meet these people. They're your kind of people. You should come along and do something with us." And yeah, it was kind of like coming home, in the middle of London. It was great. So I've been with them for about 2 or 3 years now, and the podcast has been very huge. It started off as a wee idea, and now the podcast charts all over the world.
How did you come to be in London? Because that's always interesting.
I was at BBC Scotland. I started. Do you remember Derek Jameson?
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was a producer of his show at BBC Scotland when they did that regionalisation thing, when they went, oh, we've got to move people to the regions. And then after that, I moved to ITN in 1998 as a journalist, and so I've been here as long as I've been in Scotland, if you know what I mean. I feel kind of displaced. So I think I'm one of these people that I don't quite feel here, and when I go home, I don't feel there anymore. So it's kind of a weird feeling.
That's so true of a lot of the population of the world, is that we have dual identities. And, I think in America they're much more grown up about it, and they say like Greek American. It's a
Yes.
recognition. Do you know what I mean? Like if you go to Leicester, loads of people have dual identities. In London, so many people have dual identities. But in Scotland, it has to be monolithic. Or pick one. It's not a football team. Do you know what I mean? It's where you're from.
Well, and yeah, because when I go home, my friends go, "Oh, you don't sound Scottish anymore." And then when I'm down here, people think I sound too Scottish. So you're kind of in this hinterland.
Yeah, like a team.
Partick Thistle, please.
Good man.
Yeah. Right. Can I start with some flattery?
Yes.
Okay. I had to read Garnet Hill in chunks because it was so good, and the writing was so powerful that it. And this sounds terrible, but it adversely affected me because there's bits in it about abuse, and I got 3 kids, and when I read it, I thought, "Oof, that's too good. That's too near the bone. That's unbelievably good writing." And few people touch me like that. The only other person that touched me in a different way was the Laidlaw series by William McIlvanney, and I love his writing because it's kind of like thriller, philosophy, poetry. So that's what I really got out of that. And out of yours was just is so powerful and truthful.
Actually, going back to that, the launch of that book was in 1998 when you moved to London, and it was in Waterstones in Sauchiehall Street, and it was huge. I just thought that's what happened when you had a book out. It was like 150 people there. A quartet turned up and started playing because they were called Garnet Hill. Um, it was just absolutely massive. But this is I'm going back to launch my 20th book in the same shop
Oh wow, that's cool,
in
isn't
about
it?
2 weeks' time. So it feels like a real, and also I dropped out of a PhD at Strathclyde to publish that book. And last week I got an honorary PhD from Strathclyde,
Oh, that's nice.
and my old professors were there. No, it was really nice. It just feels like a sort of full circle kind of, it just sort of makes you think about time.
Well, I think a lot of when I was doing the research on you, that kind of it's a theme that comes up. Time comes up with you quite in different ways, but so I kind of want to come on to that. But something going back to the Garnet Hill, and something that I read that I think was made you sound quite humble is now you said, now years on, I understand that even when you get your dream, you will never feel all right. So just make peace with feeling uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable, you're aware of what's going on around you. You should be in 2 minds about everything, always questioning yourself. You should never feel like, oh, here we are, we've arrived. And I kind of thought 2 things about that. I thought, well, that's a very humble thing to say, for all the success that you've had. But I also wondered if it meant that you were the kind of person, kind of similar to myself, that you read between the lines, and that can be a difficult place to live in.
It's an interesting place. Would you rather be comfortable and not knowing what's going on? I mean, for example, like Brexit, I was just down in Cornwall there, and most of the people there voted for Brexit overwhelmingly. And spending time with people that you don't agree with, because I didn't agree with Brexit, it's so important. I mean, it is like a lost art, listening to people you don't agree with, and listening to people that you don't maybe are maybe from different places than you, and it's embracing difference. And I think it's quite, and I always think about Frodo when he puts the ring on. It's quite uncomfortable, but it's much more interesting than going teas in the afternoon.
Yeah, I think that when I watch a lot of telly, and I think, oh, I can't watch telly anymore. It's a load of rubbish, and I a lot of it's so lowest common denominator. But sometimes it sounds quite depressing. It's easier if you don't think about stuff.
Yeah. But if you're a person who's questioning, if you're someone if you were angry when you were young, You know what I mean? It doesn't just dissipate because you're old and tired. If you were questioning when you were young, all journalists are questioning people, you know? It's not something that you can shed. It's a personality trait, maybe,
Yeah,
you know?
I agree. And so you moved around a lot when you were young. Was this because of your father's occupation?
It was because of my father's occupation and because of his drink problem, to be honest. So my dad would get a brilliant job. He was very charismatic. He was the funniest person I've ever met in my life. He would get a job. We would all move there. He would get drunk and punch the manager, and then we would have to move. So we moved all the time. This is a very familiar pattern in Scottish families that very few people talk about. You know what I mean? So, but it was the oil industry boom. So,
Yes.
so there was loads of jobs. And also, he was great crack. I mean, the thing about my parents was they were brilliant fun, you know? So there was always jobs to be had. It was a strange time. So we moved all over the world, and then we would come home and say to the family in Glasgow that we meant that to happen. But it
Right.
was just a series of catastrophes, to be perfectly honest.
It's such a
But from
it's
the from a distance, we looked very glamorous. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah, it's such a Scottish thing, though, isn't it? I think the Scottish relationship with alcohol. I think my brother was very troubled with alcohol. My parents were as well, and it kind of reflects onto the way I treat it as well. I think I'm always a bit paranoid about how much or how little I drink and whether I control it. Do you drink alcohol?
Stopped when I was about 19, 20, and I've never drunk, which you can say now, but for a long, long time you just didn't say that because it made people so uncomfortable, and almost immediately they launched into a kind of iteration of how much they drink every week, which I couldn't be less interested. And it's always like, I had a gin and tonic last Tuesday, and it's like, I don't think we're talking about the same thing.
I saw
Just
a sketch just the other day. It popped up on Instagram. I think it was chewing the fat or something, and they're all in a
go
pub, and it's
on.
that kind of take a drink, go on, and it's funny because
Yeah.
it's true. It's so Scottish, isn't it?
It's really interesting. I think it's because so many Scottish people are Muslim. So young people don't drink. A lot of young people don't drink. You know that convention of getting muntered when you're young, and that's
Mm.
like the only way you can bond with or the only way you can cop off with anybody is if you're ruined. It's not like that anymore. People don't really do that anymore. There's like the pictures are full on a Saturday night. That was the first thing I noticed. Full of young people, but it was all Muslim young people, and then they brought their pals, and it was like, yeah, you don't have to get wasted. There are other things to do with your young life than compromise your liver.
Yeah,
No?
it's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
my oldest boy's 16 and he's starting to go out, and he had his school prom because he was leaving school recently. And I said, you have anything? You got, don't go smuggling bottles of vodka down there by the river or something. And he went, I'm not interested, Dad. And when he came back in, I had a very good look at him, and he was completely sober. No, just not interested.
It's not like our day. Do you know what I mean? And immediately start smoking at like 7 and get drunk as soon as you can in very dangerous situations. That's what that was our and smash a phone box up. They don't even have phone boxes anymore.
Yeah, push a shopping trolley into the canal. That's
They don't even know what a canal is now.
87% of homeless Scots struggle with drug and substance misuse. ScotsCare offers specialist drug and alcohol counselling to our homeless clients to help break the cycle for good.
Let me ask you, talking about stuff you would throw into a canal. I kind of want to talk to you about cycling because I it's great for my head. And every morning I cycle. I've got a 7-year-old daughter, and I cycle her to school in the morning, and it's really good. It kind of, by the time I come back, I'm kind of mentally refreshed. And I've seen pictures of you online with your bike, and I kind of feel like for you, it's probably more than just a mode of transport.
It's you're alone and no one can talk to you or ask you for anything when you're on a bike. And it is a way of being present. It is meditation, I think, for me, you know?
Do
And
you?
I cycle everywhere.
Yeah, I said to my friend Gregor, I said that I was having a chat with you, and he says, "Oh, I see her around the West End on her bike."
Electric bike. And it is, I'm so in love with it. It's got amazing suspension because my knees started going because I'm 60 next year. And I just thought, I don't want to stop doing this. But Yeah, I mean, it's just, and the thing is, they've built cycle lanes everywhere, and very few people cycle. So, I mean, it's like the cycle lanes are for me and my pals who all support Partick Thistle, by the way.
Oh, really? That's
It's
yeah.
like a massive Thistle cyclist overlap.
Well, let me talk about. I want to talk about your character, Alex Morrow, because I've I've read those books. They're great. And is it too simplistic for me to say to you that part of her, she's the new kid on the block, you being the new kid on the block, that kind of comes through in your writing, is because you moved around a lot. I kind of get that feeling in the Alex Morrow character. Is that too simplistic?
No, I think that's really true. It is about being an outsider and always feeling like an outsider wherever you are. And that thing of, you don't fit in, but you don't necessarily want to fit in. You're quite comfortable watching from the sidelines. I think that's, you know, very familiar and familiar to lots of people. I don't know who these people are that fit in. Maybe it's the Duke of Buccleuch. I don't know who it is, but these people who feel that they're right in the middle of everything. I don't know who that is. Everybody feels a wee bit apart, I think.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's what makes her very relatable. She's got kids, she's got a husband, she's got a complicated family life, and so I kind of identified with her as well as enjoying the plots. I kind of felt that she was a real person. I felt as if I could have sat down and had a cup of tea with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, do you think now this is something, and I asked this to another author actually. I chatted to an author called Alice Clark Platts, and she wrote a book called The Flower Girls, which was a bestseller, and a couple of other detective novels. And I said, do you think you get away, and not a good way, do you think you get away with more by writing for a male main character? Because when I look at like Rebus, who's kind of like in the early books, he's kind of like heading towards alcoholism, or Laidlaw in the McIlvanney books, who has an affair. Do you think that would be tolerated with a female main character?
When Garnet Hill came out, I was interviewed a lot, and people said, "Are you a feminist?" in a very accusing way. And then 20 years, and I used to say, well, there's feminists who are just want equal rights, and then there's feminists who spoil everybody's fun and are just like a real downer, and they just ruin everything for everybody. That's the kind I am. And because it was a really unacceptable thing to be. And then 20 years later, I was at the Gothenburg Book Festival, and somebody said, "Don't you think having a female protagonist is a bit cliched?" And so I think we've really, really moved on, in terms of having a female. I think you could get away with anything with a female protagonist. And I think social attitudes move far more quickly than publishing attitudes. So I think, a woman could have an affair, a woman could head towards alcoholism, and it wouldn't be the main thing about them, in a way that wasn't possible 20 years ago, So, I mean, I think it used to be a big, big thing when I first got published. Do you want to have a woman's name on the front of your book, or are you going to use your initials?
Oh,
Right?
really?
Oh,
Oh,
huge. It was a big decision you had to make. So having the name Denise, which is, as we all know, very classy, but having that name on the front of your book was a huge signal, and it meant you were going to take sales bumps if you didn't have a sort of gender neutral name on the front of your book. But I mean, I always wanted to, represent. I wanted to normalize that, and have a working class, first name on my book prominently, not have, not kind of muddy it at all. And I think actually who buys crime novels is women.
yeah.
Who buys women buy books like 10 to 1 rate of men. I wrote a book called The Long Drop, which was about Peter Manuel. It's a true crime book.
Yep.
And that has sold incredibly well to men. Men come up to me all the time and say that's my favourite, because I think it's difficult for men to identify with women. And things like, Paddy Meehan thinks about her thinks about being fat a lot. And I think for guys, it has a different quality. I mean, men will shake their belly at their pals and laugh about it. That's just not how women are. Women are very ashamed about stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? So I think some of the female characters are more identifiable. But when I have written books like Rizzio or Three Fires, you really notice a gender split in the way people respond to them.
When I read about The Long Drop, what surprised me was that, like you say, it was an eventual massive success, but you actually struggled to get it published. Why was that?
It's a nightmare. My publisher said, "This is the best thing you've ever written. I think you've invented a genre. We'll give you half." And we were like, "No way," because they just didn't think it was going to sell. And then we took it to another publisher and they said, "Brilliant, we'll give you half." It was like, what? So, I mean, that was like a year and a half afterwards. I nearly went under during that time. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, but that, I mean, that gives you a flavour of what it's like to be a literary writer. It's really, really difficult to make a living as a literary writer.
Well, I think it says a lot, because when people talk about Denise Mina, they're talking about it's often accompanied by words like crime writing royalty, and so there is this kind of presumption that you're just like showered with gold and living in a castle somewhere. So I've spoken to other writers recently. There's a woman I know called Lexi Elliott, and she wrote How to Kill Your Best Friend, and she wrote a book called The French Girl, and she's tried to swap genres in order to get published. Is publishing, it's not something you know a lot about, is publishing not in a healthy place at the moment?
I don't think it's in a healthy place, but as you move on in your career, you realise what a miracle a long career is. It really is a miracle. To have 20 novels published in different genres, not to stick to one thing, to get the opportunities I've had, because I've written comics as well,
Yes.
and, really kind of followed my nose. I mean, when you look now at people coming, there's so many brilliant writers coming up, and you see them get 2 books published, drop off. I would say to somebody, don't take a massive advance on your first book. Who's not going to take a massive advance on the first book? There are maybe 6 people making a living at it in Scotland, honestly.
Really?
And those are all the big names that you know about. Yep. And maybe 10. And the rest of them are all doing other jobs or on the brew. I mean, it's such a struggle, but it is such a privilege. It's such a privilege to get to do that for your job. But, the Society of Authors brought out something, and it said £6,000 or something, or £4,000 is the average income for professional writers in Britain per year.
That's criminal, isn't it?
From the writing. Well, publishers are not awash with money. And the thing is, there's no point in being angry at publishers, because a lot of them are really highly educated people who are working for a lot less than they could make elsewhere. And it used to be they all had to live in London, so it's very expensive.
Yes. Yeah.
So a lot of them, they tend towards posh, I'll be honest with you. And you can be angry about that, or you can say the only way people can do that job is if they're independently rich, or their mum and dad bought them a house, because there's no money in it.
Yeah.
At the same time, there's a raft of male publishers who are right at the very top. It's all women. Raft of male publishers who are all right at the very top of the business, and they're awash with money. So you can see where it's all going. Do you know what I mean?
I said I was lucky enough to chat with Christopher Brookmeyer, and I did this. I did an introduction, and I said, "Oh, he sold 2 million books," and he kind of stopped me and he went, "You got to remember, 2 million books is over 20 novels in 25 years." So, and then when you break it down, you think it's still a lot of novels, but it's not. I suppose you're not a film star. You're not making crazy money at that point.
Listen, you're making a living, which is better than most people are, and you're doing something you love that you would actually pay to do. That's what you have to remember. We have a Soup and Sympathy Sundays every year with Chris Brookmeyer and Louise Welsh and Zoe Strachan and Maritza and lots of other people, actually. And it's all the writers get together and talk about the humiliating things that happened to them this year. Because we're all quite shy people, do you know what I mean? And and you have to go out and sell your jam. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't feel the way it looks. It looks as if you're just swishing your pashmina all day.
I think that's
shouting at people.
I think the girl who wrote the lady who wrote Alice Clark Platts, she said to me, "Yeah, I've got my life and I've got my Insta life." I think that they are two very different things.
Oh, they're very different things. Yeah, they're very different things. And I think if you want to be honest with young writers, you have to say, look, you might do well. I think Chris and I have done really well. I think, to be honest with you, Chris is doing himself down there. I think we've all done really well, but I don't know if people coming up the back of us are going to be doing that. And it's not the best writers that make a lot of money. Jeffrey Archer, garbage. Do you know what I mean? Absolute garbage. A lot of books that I read that are like literary bestsellers, absolute crap. I mean, derivative. If you want to make a lot of money, Johnny Geller's like a really famous agent, and he says what you do is you read a book that sold well and another book that sold well, and you take a bit of both and you put them together. So it's like anything in the arts, it has to be a little bit like the last thing that sold really well.
Yes.
But it can't be original. If you're doing something original, that is a real baller thing to do. If you're doing anything original or you're doing anything challenging or anything difficult, it's going to be a hard sell. And I'm just really lucky that publishers have stuck with me because I've done a lot of really difficult things, and I've made a lot of choices that were not commercial choices, oblivious to the fact that they weren't, and they just let me do it.
Have you got time to give? Join our amazing volunteers, helping at events, befriending isolated Scots, and helping at our office reception desk. ScotsCare, powered by people like you. Help us support the Scottish community in London.
I want to ask you about the book Conviction, because that was chosen for the Reese Witherspoon book club, and I wondered if does that make a big difference? I'm just being nosy. Does that make a big difference to sales and income?
Huge difference. Absolutely huge. Because the market's saturated. I think there's something like 1,500 books are brought out every week.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So, and if you judge prizes, you realise a lot of these are crap. I mean, I don't know why they're published. I know better stuff that's not getting published. So there's lots and lots of factors in that. So getting people to know that your book is out is a big deal. That's a big, big thing. Drawing people's eyes to the book is a big, big thing. It's not always because, if a book I wrote didn't sell well, I always thought, oh, it's not that good, or I've done something wrong. It's such a crapshoot what sells well. It really is. It's not the best stuff. And sometimes, you'll have done this. You find a book that didn't sell well and you're like, Moby Dick didn't sell. Kafka never sold books. Loads of people who are absolutely brilliant didn't sell. Lots of books that are absolute rubbish sold incredibly well. And it's a mystery. Nobody knows. There's no formula for it. It's dismaying, But the history of literature is full of brilliant writers trying to write something that will sell so they can write their stuff that they're really passionate about. Chekhov wrote a crime novel attempting to make a living. It's awful. Dickens was writing a crime novel, because people realised, these sell really, really well. How could I get a bit of that action? But it's harder than it looks.
So has Conviction been optioned for TV?
Yeah, it's been optioned for film.
Film, okay.
I mean, everything I've ever written's been optioned. Everything I've ever written has been optioned. One of them's been made. I've got about 4 things in development now. I've got 4 things in development. The Long Drop is in development for a play. It sits next year because they're reopening the Citizens Theatre, and they're putting on The Long Drop. And Rizzio is going on at the Edinburgh Festival next year as a play. But I mean, you just take the money, and the convention in film is always that they'll say this is definitely going to get made. And I'm so old in the tooth, I'm kind of like, that's right, it will definitely get. Telly's in a terrible state at the moment. So you just cash the checks and go away.
So am I right in thinking if they option it, they'll give you some money and then they've got the right to make it for a certain amount of time? Is that how that works?
They've got it for a year and then they get a renewal thing and then they pay you another done. And then you get masses of money if it goes to telly, if it actually gets made, or if it goes to film, it actually gets made. But, you can just get 30 grand just for signing off on something.
Well, why would you say no to that?
Why would you say no? Do you know what I mean? I think we should be more honest about who's getting what. I think we should be less oblique about who's getting what for stuff and what the actual financial dynamics of making a living as a writer are, because Byron never took any money for his poems at the beginning of his career, and then he came back and said, I need that money now because he'd spent his inheritance. But that sort of set the model of everyone's, don't talk about money, it's really vulgar. I think we should all publish our tax returns so everybody can see who's getting what. I think that they do that in Norway. Wouldn't that be great?
I think it would surprise a lot of people about how much some people are not getting.
Yes, it really would. And it would take away a lot of the shame about money. I mean, at least then people would know. People don't know how to anticipate what they're going to get for for a book, or lots of things. And you meet a lot of people who are swanning about saying they've got millions of dosh, and they haven't.
Yeah.
They haven't. Do you know what I mean?
And it's odd, the stuff that does get made. My wife and I'll sit there and, I don't know if you do this, we'll spend so much time trying to find something on telly. You just go, oh, that's it, I'm going to bed. You'll flick through Netflix and Disney and Paramount and Amazon and goodness knows what else. And you'll end up watching something. And then in the end, we'll go, that was utter horse shit. And then you find stuff like, talking Christopher Brookmeyer, I think he had a couple of things made and he's written so many good books. And you wonder why other stuff doesn't get picked up and doesn't get made, and
it's a crapshoot. It's absolutely random. It's committee decision making. You worked for the BBC. If 10 people get round a table, they're going to make a bad decision. That's just how it is. It's going to become about the personalities around the table, who's just had a success. It's not really about. In the olden days, people could just make something and then people would say that's absolutely brilliant. Taggart wouldn't have got made. Taggart was a total rip-off of Laidlaw, and they didn't pay Willie any money. You know that?
Wow. No, I didn't know
It was a total rip-off, and Willie ended up with absolutely nothing, out of print. Really not making any money at all. And but anyway, that's they don't know what they're doing either. They don't know what they're doing.
Did you read The Dark Remains, the McIlvanney-Rankin combination?
I did. I actually didn't read it because I knew Willie and I loved Willie so much, and his voice is so unique, and I love Ian, and and I've read almost everything of Ian's, but I wouldn't want to read the two together.
Yeah, it's odd. I kind of read that, and that's what introduced me to McIlvanney, actually, ironically.
Really?
And because I think I was more of a Rebus Rankin fan, and then I read that and I thought, oh, this is great, and no disrespect to Ian Rankin, but then I read the McIlvanney trilogy, and that kind of went, wow, that kind of blew me away. But
if you do an adaptation or anything like that, because I wrote a Chandler book and I adapted the Millennium trilogy for graphic novels, you realise how hard it is to keep your own voice out of it. You're always speaking in your own voice, so you might try to channel someone else's voice, but ultimately, The Dark Remains, a lot of people were buying it because it was Ian.
Yes.
So how does he bridge that between honouring McIlvanney and still being Ian, which is what the audience are coming, the expectation. Do you know what I mean? I mean, he has to kind of bridge that. It's a difficult.
I know what you mean. And my first thought is you just sound like you're onto an arse kicking at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a real conundrum,
Yeah. But let me ask you this, but you come across as a very pragmatic person. And I kind of I'd wanted to ask you about getting older. And I don't mean getting old. I just mean getting older. And there was an interview I read you did in The Big Issue a couple of years ago, and you spoke about parenting and worry and your mum, all of which, I spent decades myself worrying about. And as you get older, are you able to park worry a bit better? Because you don't sound like you worry too much.
Well, my mum died, so that's a big worry. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I was my mum's carer. That's a big worry. And, when your kids grow up, it becomes a lot easier. But, you still have that, adrenaline gland that shoot every so often you think, floors are filthy in here. Do you know what I mean? But I think it's lovely getting older and having done your best by the people around you and realising, this is not a worrying time. I don't need to be scared for everybody. I don't need to make sure, I don't have to pretend I like vegetables anymore. I don't have to, do you know what I mean? It's a lovely time.
I do know what you mean. And I'm sure there's a word for it that I just don't know what it is, but there's kind of, maybe it's a nostalgia or the pathos or something, but there's like both my brother died very young and my mum and dad are now both gone, and I spent a lot of time worrying when the phone rang, or my brother was a very troubled person, and now sometimes I sit in the house and I think it's okay, everybody that I need to look after is in this house, and that's so terrible things have got to have happened to get me to this point, but in a strange way it's kind of freeing, because
it's lovely, but that's because you did your best at that time. if you don't meet your responsibilities at that time, it really haunts you. I know people who didn't, and it really haunts them and they wish they could go back. So all that time where you're thinking, when's it going to be my turn? It is our turn. Now's our turn. Do you know what I mean? And but at the same time, those really profound connections with people who are difficult, it is an honour to be a carer. I left school at 16. I lived in London. I lived in Bromley. I left school at 16 and got a job in a nursing home. Because it was well paid, and became a carer there. And actually, that capacity to empathise, to anticipate what other people want, those skills which are so undervalued. We just don't pay people for that anymore. Those are wonderful skills, and you don't lose that ability to connect. I work in a soup kitchen in Glasgow now, and it's you feel the old muscles charging up, like, all right, you're having a bit of a panic, or you don't speak English very well, or you're worried about her and she's muntered, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those skills that you develop during those difficult times are skills you can use for the rest of your life, and they keep you connected. I mean, I think people get lonely and people get isolated, and that's because they haven't had to go through those things where they're looking after people.
And your success was kind of like Garnet Hill forward, and that's when you were kind of early 30s. So do you think that, would you have always been, if say you got this success at 18, would you be a different person, or do you think because your success didn't come till you were early 30s that you are a more grounded character?
Honest, I think I made a decision that I was going to stay in Glasgow and I wasn't going to change anything. I mean, I still go to the Kelvin Hall, to the gym there. Do you know what I mean? My life really has not changed on the face of it. So I decided, because you become aware that there's this character that other people are projecting stuff onto, Denise Mina, and I call her Denise International Airport. So people say things to you like, oh, you must be happy all the time, and your mum died the day before. They've no idea. I mean, they've no idea. They've no conception of what's going on with you. Or, you cried all the way to the event, and then people say, how lucky are you? And you can argue with them and you can say, I'm not lucky, or you've no idea the pain I'm going through, or you can just let them have it. You can just say, I mean, usually it was exhaustion. You would just be there and say, yes, I am lucky, or yeah, I am happy all the time. But I mean, if you're not on Insta constantly, if you're not constantly presenting, if you need a bit of time away from being public facing, you have to allow people to suppose that all you do is laugh and kick your height all day.
Are you good at social media?
No, I've come off it all, and I'm much happier. I've come off Instagram, I've come off Twitter, I came off Facebook. I'm on Blue Sky, but I mean, I don't really talk about myself, and I don't selfie either, because I think that's not good for you. I don't think it's good for your mental. I'm very careful with my mental health, and I'm very aware that you need to be careful of your mental health. And I don't think imagining yourself seen by randos is necessarily a good thing. Although I have to say, I miss the good days of Twitter. I think we all do, because it was great at the beginning. And I miss the good days of Facebook. I had some great crack on that. But Instagram, I really like text, I really like, because you get a lot of good jokes on Blue Sky. But I think publishers want you to be on social media. And they, because it's noise. But I mean, it doesn't sell books, but it's noise. And you're reminding people you're not dead, do you know? I just think you need a bit of time not thinking about yourself. I think that's what makes people happy, is not thinking about yourself. And if you're on social media and you're constantly presenting, here I am. I mean, I know writers who are perpetually holding their stomach in and getting their hair done. And it's just like, you can't think about anything long, in a long, deep way, because you're always imagining yourself as the performance of being a writer. Some people can perform being a writer really well. Their work's not great, but they're great at performing being a writer, what people suppose being a writer is. But they don't have a lot of inner life. And if you're introverted, I just think being happy is being connected and forgetting yourself as seen.
Yeah,
it doesn't lend itself to that. Are you on social media?
No, I'm terrible at it. And no, I'm not terrible. I make a decision not to be on it, and I it's something we talk about to the kids. a lot, is the image that they project and what you put out there. And, once it's out there, it could be out there forever and ever. And it's much more so for my children's generation, I suppose, because I'm not saying I did anything hellish when I was a kid, but, everyone makes mistakes. And for like my son, Noah, he could say something stupid on Instagram or X or something, and then it bites him in the arse in 15 years' time.
You do change, do you know what I mean? You change as you get older. And I mean, long term, it's a thing, but it's also like, I don't think it's great for your mental health, because I think Instagram is based on envying other people, or what you said, people flexing for the gram and all that kind of thing. I mean, these muscle men are not walking about doing that all day. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes they're just picking their nose and looking out the window, and they're not sending you pictures of that. And, I just don't think, I think it's good fun, but I don't think it's, I don't think it's, and also I'm getting older. Do you know what I mean? And you shouldn't spend lots of time thinking about what you look like. It's pretty fucking grim. It's like, oh, there's another bag under your eye.
It's not even the muscles for me. It's the tidy houses that kill me. I spend my days walking around picking my son's skid-marked pants off the floor. This is.
I was looking at someone's Insta and I said, "Where's all your stuff?"
Yeah.
They said, "What stuff?" And I said, "This all your stuff, all like half-opened envelopes and things, empty cups and all that kind of thing." And they're like, "I live like that." I was like, "Whoa!"
No, I couldn't live like that. And I think the other thing that did for me for social media, I used to work for a media production company, and the decisions, like if they were going to launch a podcast or launch something else, the decision on whether they did it or not was not about the quality or the content. It was about, can you tell me, have they got more than 750,000 influencer followers or followers? Yeah. And I would have the constant argument. I'd say, yeah, but they're effing idiots. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And
yeah,
there was one, my friend was in a similar position, and he produced a very successful podcast with a reality star who would just record it on her phone or her day. Oh, I'm going to the shops. I'm going to do this. I'm going around my mum's to have a cup of tea. And then she would send all this diatribe, this rubbish, and that was his job, to sit there and edit it up. And then it just depresses me that people think this is entertainment.
But there's a level of, they've got loads of followers, they've got loads of they've got lots of attention, they've got lots of eyes, and that's kind of, I call it W.H. Smith's level, right? So they're sort of performing for other people who've got lots of followers. And actually, they're not doing anything worth shit. But they're copying people who are doing stuff that's worth shit. There was a great guy who invented the word humble brag, who was on Twitter in the early days. I can't remember his name. I think he died. I think he died quite young. But he is who a lot of people are copying. I want to see the people who are getting copied,
Yes.
I'm not interested in these people who are performing bad copies of what other people did. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not interested in that. I mean, AI is going to wipe those people out.
Oh, AI terrifies me. I find it
It's scary.
Yeah. Will it affect the publishing industry, or
it's going to hugely affect the publishing industry? There's a whole economy of people writing romance novels, for example, which are pretty formulaic. They write a lot of them. They write maybe 5 a year and they make a living. They're gone. That's done. And a lot of crime writing is a copy of something else. They're not going to do anything new, but that whole economy is all going to get wiped out. At the same time, AI does really useful things. I was talking to a chemist the other day, and she was saying, she can put in really complicated ideas and it can boil it down in a way that explains it to fund holders, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, there are useful things in it. But I mean, apparently the summary that you get when you Google anything now means that no one is following links anymore because they're not trying to work stuff out. So that's going to affect the way we research stuff. And it is also going to affect the internet because people are not going to advertise on the internet anymore because no one's following links through.
That's interesting, isn't it? I didn't know that. I didn't know it. I think I spend a lot of time worrying about the environmental effects of AI as well. I keep telling the kids that. I said, you can't just Google the shit out of everything on AI because, I think the whole of the South Island and New Zealand is now a massive data center, and it doesn't work.
So much energy. And there are writers out there who for $4,000 a year will do it for nothing. And we are carbon neutral.
Denise Mina, carbon neutral writer. I like it. Yeah. Denise, thank you for joining me today. It's been brilliant. I know you got to get on. I could sit and talk to you for hours. What's the rest of the year for you like at the moment?
Very exciting, to be honest, because Rizzio's going to be on at the Edinburgh Festival next year as a play. So I've got workshops for that. I've got a book out called The Good Liar, which is about forensic science and the problems with expert witnesses and privatisation of forensic services in England and Wales, which no one ever talks about.
Yeah.
And I'm going on holiday, and yeah, so pretty great. And to be honest, my allotment has gone gangbusters this year, which is I cannot believe it's a miracle because I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm eating beans fresh every day, potatoes, onions, strawberries. So it's a pretty exciting year.
This is great. I bought a greenhouse recently I tried to get Noah, my oldest, and he's got some tomato plants, and the tomato plants seem to be 7 foot tall, and he's got one tomato on it. So I'm not too sure what he's doing wrong.
Pinch the top off.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think. I remember from biology, if you pinch the top off, it stops growing up and the hormones go back down into the plant. This is how much I know about plants. Look it up, so in case I'm wrong. And then the tomatoes start developing. So if it's going straight up, pinch the top off. Pinch the buds at the top. But look it up first and don't use AI.
I'll find a book.
Yeah, get a book.
Yeah, crazy idea. Denise, thank you.
Lovely to meet you, Marcus. Thank you so much.
The Saltire Donor Club is our monthly giving community where people can help homeless or vulnerable Scots rebuild their lives. Your regular donation, no matter how small, makes a big impact. Visit ScotsCare.com and click donate to get started.
Thanks for listening. And remember, if you don't need a service of ScotsCare, you might be interested in supporting the charity by donating or volunteering your time. It's easy to sign up. To do so, please visit ScotsCare.com. Next time on the ScotsCare podcast, I'll be joined by Lawson Muncaster, co-founder and managing director of City AM, the free London business newspaper. From launching one of the capital's most recognisable titles to shaping how the city reads its daily news, Lawson brings sharp insights, bold ideas and a true Scottish spirit to the conversation. Until then, bye-bye.